This video is sponsored by Bambu Lab. This is an FDM miniature. However, it has sharp lines, clean details, and more importantly, a lack of surface defects that you often see when you have too many supports. You see, several months ago, I found these cool grim dark Jeeps that I really wanted to print. They didn't have a single flat surface on them, so if I was to print them, the whole bottom section would have just been a bunch of supports. And that's something I really didn't want to deal with. So I decided to try something I never thought of previously, which was to slice the model in half. And right away, I noticed something interesting. The amount of supports was decreased drastically, and when I printed it out, the quality was absolutely fantastic. So I tried the exact same thing on a different miniature, and this time, the amount of supports had decreased to practically nothing at all. And when I'd printed it out, the quality was actually better than what I got previously. So I kept trying this method on a bunch of different miniatures, and every single time, they were turning out fantastic. However, I realized that there was now two major problems. Because I'm printing the miniature flat, there's now a lot more top surfaces, which essentially gives you much lower quality. The second problem I noticed was the massive gap in the middle. Because I was using super glue to glue the two parts together, even a tiny little amount of it was enough to push the two pieces apart. But I still thought the results I was getting were just so much better that I began experimenting with a bunch of different miniatures, but it turns out there is a solution for the gap problem, and that is this stuff. You see, because unlike super glue, this stuff is not an adhesive. It's not gluing the two parts together, it is melting them. So as a result, there is no gap between the two parts. The only thing you have is just a tiny little misalignment when you are manually putting the two parts together. For example, if I was to take this cube and simply apply just a little bit to the surface, to explain how hard this stuff is binded just from a tiny little amount, here's a rubber mallet. Literally, I can't separate it. Okay, at this point, the cube is literal mush. Everything broke, except for the part that was glued. On top of that, when you use it on the surface of PLA, it smooths it out and gives you a much better surface. I recorded some macro shots that demonstrate exactly what is happening. Around this time, Bambu Lab sent me their new printer, the X2D. In the first miniature I printed on it, I was instantly impressed. I decided to try and stress test it and see, can I actually print something that's even smaller? And that is this guy, the smallest miniature I've ever held in my hands. It is smaller than the size of my fingernail. And of course, I printed him a companion, a tiny little battle tank. But the impressive part is that not only was it able to print it, but there was still enough detail that you could tell exactly what it was. So with this new method and the insane quality of the X2D, I wanted to print a whole army of orc Marauders. Every single day I'd slice up a new plate and print it out. I'd usually set them up before I went to bed, so by the time I had my coffee, I had my new miniatures. And as there was hardly any supports, they peeled off easily. Then I realized that I should probably open the army lister for one-page rules and actually figure out what kind of a list I should make and how many miniatures I was gonna need. So I put together a quick 1,000 point list, but as I continued printing miniatures, I realized that 1,000 points was not enough. So I decided to print a 2,000 point army. So every single day I was adding just a little bit more, and as I was printing out some stuff, I thought as my A1 printers are just sitting idly, I should print out something big on them as well. And I chose this massive personal carrier by Puppeteer. Years ago, they were kind enough to give me full access to their library, so I had ample choice for this project. More or less, everything that you see in teal color was printed on the X2D, and everything in black filament I printed on the A series. While I was assembling the Marauders, I also realized that to get the perfect connection, it is much easier to just dry fit them and then grab the Tamiya and apply it on the surface. While I was printing my miniatures, I didn't even realize, but I also needed some bases for this army. So I opened up the Bambu Lab Handy app and found some bases. But while I was there, I also found these base toppers, which were pretty interesting. I wish I was a little bit more patient, but was kind of excited, so I began gluing all the miniatures, so as a result, only the special elite units end up having the base toppers. Day after day, I kept printing out plates full of miniatures, parts, and everything that I needed to assemble a 4 army. When I printed the Engineer, I wanted to try something. I went into the settings and changed the bottom shell thickness to 1.5 millimeters. I wish I had tried this sooner. Because this made the bottom layer so much more robust, it made the aligning process way more precise. And the line where the model was split in half practically disappeared. Now, the X2D also has a second nozzle, so I wanted to try something which I thought would be pretty cool. I swapped back to the big nozzle and printed a big monolith piece of terrain in 2 colors. Then I also incorporated the AMS and printed out this power reactor with 3 colors. Now, for some parts, you simply have to print it with supports, and that's where I used the second nozzle to test out printing with PTG, which does not stick to PLA, something I plan to use in the future to print out small parts like heads, arms, and similar things. I did check something interesting, and I ended up racking up 596 printing hours on the X2D. It was printing out every single day for, I guess, over a month now. So if you're looking for a dedicated printer to use every single day, the X2D would be my choice. Because even with all the features on the dual nozzle, it's surprisingly affordable. But if you're in a budget, the A1 Mini is an absolute beast, and currently there's a 4th anniversary sale across Bambu Labs, so there's a ton of discounts. So make sure to click the links below. And with this army assembled, it was time for the ultimate test to see what they look like with some paint on. Now, I really love using this primer, and on FDM, it's even extra helpful, as it acts as a bit of a filler. The turquoise color definitely looked absolutely beautiful. However, while priming them, I kept thinking to myself, I should have just gone with black filament. As this was an absolutely big undertaking, I decided to start with a big vehicle, and at this point, I didn't really know what the color scheme was going to be for this army. But considering this vehicle was heavily inspired by the armor personnel carrier from the Aliens movie, it just felt right to paint it in the green, regardless of what the color scheme was gonna be. When I had the army in front of me and was trying to decide on which colors I was going to use, I realized that quite some time ago I got this really interesting metallic paint that I never really tried using in my miniatures. And after dry brushing it on the leader, I knew I had to shift the entire color scheme towards this blue metallic. Even the axe that was printed flat looked absolutely fantastic. Now these guys are technically made out of scrap, so I mixed up a little bit of umber paint to create the appearance of dirt that is gathering all over the armor. And the warmer hue just really contrasted well against the blue armor. With the overall miniature looking incredibly dark, I knew that a very bright OSL effect would be the perfect way to balance it and make the whole army just stand out a bit more. And the whole time I kept painting, I just kept printing new models. When I saw the plate had finished, I realized that I painted for close to 10 hours without getting up. Then I got a bit of streaking grime to go back and work on the big armored vehicle. And after I finished cleaning it up, the final result genuinely looked absolutely insane. Especially when you consider this was printed with a 4mm nozzle, this thing was punching way above its weight class. When I began painting the rest of the team, I realized that the color scheme was just a little bit simple when it translated to different models. Adding a secondary contrasting metallic felt like the perfect way to do that. I went with bronze and burnt tin mixture, as it just made the whole thing feel a little bit more industrial than if I just used a pure gold. Something I really wish I thought of sooner was first priming the miniature in this umber color and then doing the dry brushing with the blue metallic, which was the same idea I applied to this vehicle. I tried to paint quite fast, but as I constantly printed new models, the end seemed far away. But the 2 units I printed made it feel worth it. One of them was the Engineer, but the second thing was this monstrosity, which really felt like it was gonna become the centerpiece of my army. Even though he only finished printing several days ago, he's already jumping the queue to be in the next miniature I'll be painting. At this point, I was just incredibly happy with the army, but it is something that I'm constantly adding new units to, and it is sort of like an ongoing project for me now. And I definitely think FDM miniatures have ascended to a new height, because even several months ago, I really did not think I'd be able to print this level of detail without having to sacrifice a massive chunk of the miniature just to place the supports there. In some way, it wasn't even about the quality, but just how easy it is to print stuff when you don't have to worry about supports. As going over all the different settings will take a very long time, I am just gonna upload a file to MakerWorld that'll have all the settings combined into it. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. And thank you to Bambu Lab for sponsoring this video. Make sure to check out the links in the comment and the description.